Welcome back, guys, and I hope Dan Siegel was good. Scott always gets great videos I want you to pay attention to. Okay, we've got a special treat now for your content piece, and this is, I want you to welcome Dr. Karen Bergstrom.
Hello.
Karen, nice to be here with you.
Yep.
Karen is, she has her PhD from CGI, California Graduate Institute, and has spent her career, a large part, she's done a lot of stuff, working with basically a lot of the social world that you wouldn't expect having to do with children. Two organizations, one of which she was an executive of, and another in which she helped to direct and found. The first one is Olive Crest, and here in Southern California, Olive Crest is a place where foster care is done at a very high level, and she always made sure that the clinical training and the social work training was done right. The second one is called Safe Families, and that's more of a ministry passion for Karen. She's going to tell you about that too. And Safe Families model is, there are times when a child is with parents who are temporarily incompetent, maybe drugs or whatever, and there needs to be a place to put that child in a home that's loving with good structure for several weeks while mom and dad go through rehab, get clean and sober, get better life skills, and come back. And so she has a network of thousands of churches around the world now where where families can take in kids for that temporary amount of time, and it's wonderful work. And Karen and I have known each other longer than anybody in this classroom.
That's how old we are. That's how long.
We've been friends for over 30 years. We met when we were 7 years old.
Yeah, 7 years old.
And so there's just been a wonderful relationship. So we've known each other since we were both in grad school and went to training seminars and analytic brown bag lunches and conference to learn all this stuff, and we've kind of stayed in touch the whole time. Now, currently, it's the longest bio I've ever given anybody. You must feel good.
Because I'm older.
No, because you've accomplished a lot.
Okay.
Also, Karen works with the Townsend Leadership Group, which is the kind of the sister organization. The Institute just puts out the academic part. Townsend Leadership Group is the professional part, where we have TLP teams and directors. Many of the people who are your process group facilitators are Townsend Leadership program people, but also we put out consultants and we put out coaches and this sort of thing. Karen is involved in the leadership of running all that, so we spend a lot of time together. So,
Yep.
it's been a
Want
good
to hear
ride so
about
far.
it? Yeah, it's been
Now
great.
she's got a lot of stuff to tell you, especially how you can practice and use the skills you're learning about the growth model in the big world. She's going to help you with a way to look at that.
Yeah. So I thought that would be interesting tonight, is to think about how do you take all this great learnings that you're involved in, this rich learnings, and apply it to your work as you go into the world. And so it is interesting that here I sit working in two different venues with business leaders and coaches, therapists, and working with families, organizations and people that can afford to hire us to take them to the next level. And at the same time, the other part of my life right now is working with the most marginalized families that I can think of in America, which are families at risk for losing their children and for family disintegration. And I kept thinking, why am I in these two different places? And that's kind of what I wanted to share with you all today, is that this great growth theory that you're getting can be applied to wealthy CEO, great organization that's doing phenomenal, and to a little struggling family that actually may be living literally in their car on their street with their two kids, trying to figure out how they're going to make it. And
so you take the lens of the growth model our students are learning: attachment, separateness, integration, adulthood, and you through that lens you can work with a Fortune 500 company or somebody living in their car.
Right.
Great.
And this movement, Safe Families, which we're highlighting a little tonight, I wanted to tell you how it was this very model that really was really behind the pieces of the architecture to this model. And so I want to kind of share that with you. So there is an idea, there was this idea that what if families in the community took in other people's children for a little while and for free, and watched the children while their parents, usually it is a mom, single mom, get back on their feet. And what if the only thing we offered them was relationship? What if actually this bonding, and boundaries and integration reality were practiced relationally, and that was enough for families to move out of crisis to a place where they then can
Wow.
get back to where they are.
So much more than, well, we got to make sure they've got food, shelter, you know those things. But you're saying, what if the real bottom line is healthy relationship?
Only. What if we built a movement around introducing a family that's a little bit ahead, has some resources, has relational capacity, with a family that at that moment is in deep crisis? And what if that was really all we were good at? That's all we really expected of ourselves, and trusted that process. So this movement was built on that. And I wanted you to get excited as you think about your work and taking this model and applying it to your good work as you go out after graduation. And I wanted just to share with you that even 30 years ago, running group homes and foster care, I would invite John to come, and we would dig into how do staff lead well when they're raising kids in a group home, or foster parents who, this was way before we had any of the attachment, trauma-focused training or any of that. We just used this model.
Yep.
It was the way that we taught people to raise kids, or it was the way we taught staff to understand human behavior and understand each other. So I thought I would go over a couple things with you. Something delightful that's...
Before,
Okay.
I want you to brag a bit, and I know
Okay.
you're a little bit narcissistic phobic.
You can. Okay, I'll brag.
How big is Safe Families now?
So as a result of the simplicity of this model and the correctness of this model, it's we're in 32 states. We've hosted almost 40,000 kids in this movement, all volunteer-based, and 5 countries. 32 states, 5 countries, 40,000 children, and all of this in the last 15 years. We're 15 years old. And it really began, I remember calling John again, like I do every time I'm building something new. Will this work? I was terrified. Is relationship really enough? Is it really true that if a mom connects with another mom and breathes some life into her and lets her know that she's for her and that she can do this, and hosts her children meanwhile, which is, delightful. But we say in this movement, the orphan is the mom, not the children. The children have a mom.
Yes.
So it's a very different attitude of, I am for you to be their mom. I believe you can do this. And for the first time during this relationship time, this mom that's struggling has a little more oxygen to be able to say, you really think I can do this? And it goes through the process to get back on our feet.
Gosh, it just makes me think so much about the neurology, Karen, of we keep thinking, well, they need skills. But if you're not connected deeply and safely, the skills training is like la, la, la.
Right.
They don't metabolize it. The
Yeah.
relationship's got to be driving all that.
And so what happened about 10 years ago, brand new research came out that I wanted to share with you. So we're talking about the growth model, and John and I will talk about it a little more, but I wanted to introduce to you a social model that's deeply embedded in research. The Center for Social Policy put it out, came out about a decade ago, but it was right in the middle of the launching of Safe Families, and this idea, can volunteers really do this? Can communities really love people in trouble before they go off the cliff and do child abuse and family disintegration? And so it's called the protective factors. So research says that if 5 factors are in place, and I'm going to go over them with you, are in place, the likelihood of abuse highly, highly diminishes.
So statistically, they've shown this.
They've shown this research-based and beautiful. So in the middle of all these good ideas, we actually have some research and some evidence to say this actually works. So it's exciting for me. So I want to share it with you. And I thought, as I share the research on protective factors for families, if families have this type of a protective factor functioning in their home, then the likelihood of their children being harmed in such a way, hurt possibly, poverty, yes, lots of the things that will continue in their life but not harm to the point of family disintegration and child abuse. So the first one that I want to talk about, and I thought it would be fun to show you how each of these components that have nothing to do with our growth model. And these are not researcher based on any of kind of the theories.
They're kind of atheoretical.
Atheoretical or CogB, you know, more of a idea, do these 4 things and life will work. But I wanted to show you how they're integrated and challenge you, even as you are thinking about your good work in the future, of how to take the growth model and think about how does it work really in human behavior and work. So the first one in John, I think I'm not even going to go in order, and you have to kind of figure out where this fits in the growth model.
I'm used to this. I've known her a long time. I was expecting it not to go in order.
I'm not going to do it in order, so we'll see if he gets it right. So parental resilience is one of the 5 factors that if the family has that built into their system, the likelihood of abuse diminishes. So I'll define resilience in my way. It'll be my language, okay, John?
Always.
Okay. So resilience, what do my notes here say? The human capacity to face and overcome, maybe transform an adversity. But the ability to do that, if a family has the ability to ask or receive, develop this human capacity, bounce back, handle things that are really hard, and face them, then they have a better chance of making it through this really big crisis in their life. Where would you put that on our structure? 3, ding, 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 ding. He got it right. So we call that, so talk a little about that, reality and...
It has to do with the integration of negative and positive reality, or just integration, where God meant us, living in a fallen world now, to deal with failure, loss, hurt, rejection, hard times. And when we, learn to not expect the world to be perfect, and so we can not judge the world or ourselves, just say that's the way it is. We call that normalizing. That increases the ability to deal with it. And secondly, it helps us build support so that people can enter our life and say, I'm with you in this, and we can persevere.
Yeah. So our language, we don't talk about resilience in that way. There's great research out. But in the social science world, resilience is really a great factor in human potential. And so they looked at families that made it out of their crisis, and resilience was one of the greatest factors. And how do we build that in families and so forth? And, you know, what I only knew really was the growth model, so I thought it in terms of reality, integration. And some of these brave families living on the streets, struggling in drugs, addictions, family of origin issues like you've never seen before with children, have the ability to integrate, and sometimes better than some of us do. They have a strength of character to be able to look at reality and go, I'm going to do this. I mean, to the fact that they hand over a child to a stranger, and it's usually a church person who are even stranger, and say, I'm going to let you do this for me. And there's a resilience to them where the reality is so true that they know they need to do this. So that's resilience.
Here's a negative reality. We've got 10 minutes left. Okay. We got 4 to go.
The next one is this concrete support in times of care. This one's a little bit challenging, but basically we used to think as long as we give them food and shelter and so forth that they will make it. And so we've spent a lot of money and time in the social sector providing stuff for people. And it is one of the protective factors. If a family is homeless, giving the children a place to live will provide a lot more safety. And so when we talk about the reality of, not the word reality, but about concrete, when they encounter a crisis like domestic violence and realize their life is going off the cliff, where in the character structure would you kind of identify this factor needs to be developed?
So the concrete part would be, how do you prevent bad things to keep occurring for you, and what are some practical skills and tools?
Yeah, how do you stop? 2, ding, 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 ding. You're doing good, John. You're doing real good.
Separateness and boundaries, and getting clear boundaries, and empowering the mom especially to say, I want this and this doesn't work for me, right?
Yeah, no more.
No more.
No more. I'm not going to live the way my mom lived. I'm not going to raise my kids the way my family did. Yeah. I'm coming off the streets. I'm bringing the kids in, or I'm going into rehab and trusting someone to help me out. This one's a little more obvious, so I know you're going to get it right, but one of the ones that really comforted me in this movement is that one of the social factors is the language is used social connections. That if a family is connected to a person that cares for them, the likelihood of them harming their children. So so much of what we want to do is treatment plans and setting up all kinds of systems of care, but this one is just plain old simple relationship. If a person has a relationship with somebody good in their life that they know is for them, harm does not happen to children.
Need-based attachment, number one.
Need-based attachment. I think I've been more astounded by this than anything.
What is that?
So we have host families that host the children that live in great homes and have wives and husbands, two-income families or one-income families are pretty secure. And I have found that sometimes the marginalized or homeless mom or drug-addicted mom actually has more ability to be aware of what they need more than the host mom that's hosting the children. Because they're not hosting out of a need. They're hosting out of altruism or they probably are hosting out of a need. But so I've really been surprised
like it's
about
sort
that.
of naked need for them. That's all they have.
Yes.
Jesus talked about the poor will I have with you. They can't disguise it. They're just there with a need, and so it probably helps with the attachment needs.
And so much of the teaching that goes on is between the mom that's struggling with the mom that thinks she has her needs met and really finds out the conflict. So all this beautiful learning is happening between these two. So social connections, and I just want to again reiterate, it was a risk to go forth based on the growth model and say, can volunteers just do this for each other and not have all the extra services and no treatment, there's no counseling, it's just this relational compassion. And when this research came out, I thought, wow, nothing that I've shared with you so far of these 3 protective factors require a PhD. I hate to break it to you, it doesn't even require a master's degree from Townsend Institute. That these are factors that can be offered human to human. That these are things that can happen organically between healthy people. So that's what was exciting to me, is that protective factors aren't clinical. They're common sense. And then the last 2 really talk about education. They're more based on knowledge of parenting and knowledge of social emotional competence. And so I think it's really takes a maturity to understand.
She's throwing me the ball.
No, I'm saying...
She's tossing me. Am I supposed to like tip it in? Like, this is really hard. She's like telling me everything to say.
Okay, what's the last one, John?
Well, I think that since this has to do with training and helping people to learn developmental skills on a competence level, that sounds very much to me like the 4th stage called adulthood, where we learn to have a work ethic, to develop skills we need to make the world a better place.
Yep. And this is where we start with people. That's part of our problem, is that we as practitioners are really smart and we have a lot of ideas, and this is where we start. We believe people need to be trained. They need to understand how to raise their children, in this case, take care of their children, or be in therapy, or all of the things that we're so smart. And so I've had fun saying I've been able to put my PhD on the shelf, and when the protective factors really are just human factors. That if humans are surrounded by people that care about them in a healthy way, they then will have the capacity or grow to have the capacity to learn. A quick story is we had one of these a child in our home, little Lissa, and her mom would scream at her child every time she told her anything.
So you had a lot of observational time watching. Was that in your home, watching Mom and Alyssa in the home? So that's where you started figuring out the dynamic.
Yes, I did. I actually practiced it, but what I saw was that I couldn't teach her anything until I had a relationship with her. And one of the stories is she got dressed up for church, to go to church with us. The mom was going to go, her child was in our home, why don't you go? She wanted to go to church, and she was dressed up in her street clothes. She really was struggling out there in the streets, and I'm talking heels this high and a tight dress, and she was decked out for church.
Oh, she was a prostitute?
There was some prostitution, but more of it was just her street clothes, just her party. And she was dressing up to join us. And my kids came in and said, Mom, she's wearing this, you should probably go tell her. I go, you go tell her. This is a family ministry, you know. And what I wanted to share with you is that because of my relationship with her, I was able to tell her, my church I go to will judge you. If you walk in those clothes down that middle aisle in the way that I know you walk, they're not going to get to know the mom that loves her little girl, the mom that's working so hard to get back on her feet. And so I had a wonderful experience of thinking I didn't have a right to speak to her. But when I said, I want them to like you, I want them to know you, and they won't. And so I taught her a life lesson that I had permission to. And so anyways, I'm not making you choose what was happening on the tree there. I think it was an integrated experience. That if we don't have those kinds of depths of relationships, we can't speak that way to people.
How did she respond to that wonderful thing?
She went back in my girls' closet. They were both in high school, my daughters, and dug around. They found an outfit for her and dressed. She still strutted when she walked down the middle aisle at church. She still turned it on, But my point is, I wanted her to win, and she was able to hear that instead of that big judge. So my encouragement is to take the model that you're learning, and I've applied it to a ministry, and I've applied it to a clinical program at a big agency, 700 employees. But how is this true when it comes to working with people? And how can you take these concepts? You can sit here with John someday and run the test through him and ask him, where does that fit, John, on the character model?
I can tell you what's going to happen in 1 minute.
What?
I know these students. They're really bright, they're very curious, and they're thinkers. Right now, they're going to bombard you with, well, what I want to do is an equestrian thing. How's that fit? What I want to do is an adolescent
That's
treatment.
what I want you to do.
And what a place for you guys to feel the vision that God's put in you and say, whatever it is, the growth model is universal, so how do we look at it through a lens and have people not coping, but transform for the entire rest of their life? That's what Karen's teaching you.
Yep.
So that's our stuff. Thank you very much.
You're welcome
I had no
very
idea
much.
where you were going to go with this, and I'm so moved by especially the story of the mom.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's just such a picture of redemption. We all need it. All right, guys, we're going to go to the other place where we get to play on the monitors and answer questions. So, Scott, tee it up, and we'll be right there.
Sounds good.